Right, now it's time to strip down this shutter from this Retina Reflex S. So here we have the shutter as it came from the camera, and I'm going to show you how you take the thing to pieces. If I can find my screwdrivers. Okay. Let's see. So we've got two screws here. They hold that little plate down. That plate positions that little drive gear there. Alright, take those screws out. Now someone's been into the shutter before, I can tell, because the flash sync terminal here is normally painted black, matte black preferably. There are two buffers, one here and one here. Their job is just to take the thump out of the mirror and as it comes up. One of them's missing. There's a lot of glue spread there, so I know it was put back. It's fallen off since, so they must have chosen to use something that didn't work particularly well. Right, so that plate comes off. There are two washers that go under there, or spacers. Bit of glue and rubbish on them. Normally I just scrape those clean. That plate acts as a guide to this gear here. There's a lot of muck in there. That's glue, big lump of glue where that bush had been. Right, so there's the rack that pops out. That little gear comes off. A single screw here, that's usually very tight, and in this case it is. The last camera I tackled, that was actually loose. That's quite important. That screw, there's a little bush and drive gear that's sat under that, centered on that bush. This arm does a couple of jobs, but one of the jobs it does is it closes the flash sync switch, which allows the flash connections to be live. The flash is otherwise disconnected at that point, because otherwise the flash would be going all the time. Right, so that's out. Here we have a single screw. This one single screw there. Oh, I could see that flash wire was floating free there. Yeah, that whole switch is broken. That's not uncommon. It was not held by much plastic, and the plastic is often fractured. I'll either replace the whole lot, or I'll cast that whole section in araldite to keep that thing together. There aren't many parts for old cameras, as you might imagine. Right, that little hold down plate. The gear should have a little washer on the top, and in fact it does. That's quite good. That's a little drive dog. On the other side we might see there's a little dog. That's where it drives this little cam. Now that cam, as you cock the shutter, as the shutter cocks to full position, that cam picks up this arm and sweeps it across. Now that opens the shutter blades for viewing, and so as you need to do for an SLR. Right, I'll take these screws off. This is the trigger. This releases the shutter. The shutter release button acts on this part. This acts on this lever here, which acts on the shutter itself. There's a return spring under here, which I don't want to lose. This part is the return spring there. This part is sometimes gummed up where it's got old grease or dirt or something that's got under it, and that's when the shutter release will be quite stiff. Now there are 4 screws that hold the next components together. One down in that hole, one down there, the other 2 you can see. Now the next task is to unsolder this flash terminal connection here, and I'll do that off camera, because it'll take me 5 minutes and you don't... Okay, I've desoldered that wire. There's the other end of that flash terminal, still soldered up but broken away from its post. I'll have to decide what I'm going to do about that. Okay, with the flash terminal unsoldered, oh, now I see other things. Normally there's an insulating washer here, a fibre washer. That's missing completely. We pull that, that should come off the front there now. We've taken all the screws out, it does. Okay. Here you can see that some heat shrink tubing has been put on there. Presumably because the plastic insulator that was there previously has been buggered about with to some extent. But otherwise that looks fine. There's the shutter itself, and here's the housing. Now there's not normally much to go wrong with these. This is all running smoothly. This is the gears that couple to the meter movement, and that's all running smoothly. So all of this will need to be cleaned up. There's a washer here, a little thin hard washer. Got to make sure you don't lose that. Otherwise that's all looking complete. I'm going to have to rebuild this contact or use one of my precious spares. Okay, I'll get onto that next, or perhaps later. The shutter next, because that's straightforward.